Good day. It's Friday, February 21st. I'm in Kyiv, Ukraine. My name is Brian Bonner. I'm the chief editor of the Kyiv Post. Welcome to Hromadske TV's weekly wrap-up of the news. Today is another sad anniversary, Euromaidan plus 6 years. It's been 6 years tomorrow since President Viktor Yanukovych fled the 100-day uprising known as the Euromaidan Revolution. It was a bloody end to the revolution. The bloodiest days were February 18th and February 20th, when approximately 100 protesters and some police officers were killed. We're going to look at where the cases stand now, where the investigations stand now, what it means for Ukraine, whether there's any hope for justice in these murders. With me today is Bohdan Nahaylo, British-Ukrainian journalist and a longtime observer of Ukraine, and Tamara Kiptenko, Kyiv Post, who's also in our video unit and has been doing some projects. But let's start first with some graphics just to get some numbers out of the way. If we could show that with the active cases and where things stand. As you see, there's a lot of cases filed, but there's a sequence of events that built up. The revolution started late November, and the violence started the killings actually started in January. And then February 22nd, of course, is when Yanukovych fled. So beyond that, I'd also like to, by way of introduction, just so people can remember those horrendous days, is to introduce a new documentary by Hromadske journalist Nastya Stanko called Bullets. Now, the Euromaidan Revolution has prompted books. The Kyiv Post has a book called Witness to Revolution. It's prompted many documentaries, including Winter on Fire, a very popular documentary. And now this is the latest. It'll be on the Hromadske's English language website right after this program. Let's see a clip from Nastya Stanko's Bullets. Oh, not now? Okay, we're not going to do it now. Sorry about that. Let's go into the discussion. Bohdan, you wrote a column recently about the lack of justice. Why haven't the people who ordered the murders been found, convicted? Why don't we have justice at this point?
Well, the official excuse is that the legal system isn't working properly, that there are blockages throughout. I think the real reason is that there hasn't been the political will to pursue this matter to the end. And there may be many factors for that. I've suggested that we have a Ukrainian historical narrative which is patriotic, which few people doubt, about the killings of almost 100 people, as you said, by snipers from the security forces, perhaps with Russian guidance or involvement. That's not proven, but that's suspected. On the other hand, as the years have gone by, we've had other suggestions, and there's been a lot of conjecture, that the actual tragic events were triggered by those interested in manipulating the situation, not interested in the deal that was being cut out at the last minute with the EU's good officers for a transitional phase for Yanukovych to go quietly and for others to replace him, those standing on the Maidan. And I think what is particularly disturbing is that as the years have gone by, there is more and more suggestive evidence that there were people involved that later were defenders of the revolution of dignity and were supposedly upholding its values, that may have been involved as catalysts, as detonators. And I think what concerns me also is, apart from the dismay and the division that this unsolved tragedy and this bleeding wound is causing, the pain that it still brings, and confusion, is that also there's a lot of, and I would say increasing, negative fallout outside of Ukraine. And this issue has been brought up again now at the height of the battle between the Democrats and the Republicans in a new supposed documentary film, repeating largely the Moscow narrative, but still us raising questions that should have been answered or solved a long time ago.
It seems, I don't know what your belief is, but having been here during those horrible days and watching this unfold, this was a genuine revolution. People were united to get Yanukovych out. And my reading of the escalating violence was this was truly an attempt to suppress the revolution and to scare the revolution into submission. It failed miserably. It backfired. All kinds of video evidence, all kinds of eyewitness evidence. Why can't there be any more clarity today, where we now have the Moscow narrative competing with what looks to be the real events? And for me, the recent, where prisoner exchange, where Moscow was demanding suspects in the Euromaidan murders, added more evidence to me of Moscow's involvement. What do you really think happened, since it looks like we're never going to see a judicial fact-finding exercise?
Look, this is guesswork, but it's based on the suggestions that we're getting and maybe some of the planted evidence that is leading us to these conclusions. But I think there is a very murky background to the actual beginning of the killings. The killings that started, people that were being kidnapped, people were shot, not just on the site of Institutska, but a month earlier already there had been killings on outside of by the Chernobyl statue on Hrushevsky Street, etc. Chechushniki were roaming free, the Maidan supporters were organizing to keep them out, etc. We know all that, that's the context. But why suddenly did a slaughter occur? Why did the OMON, the riot police, start retreating all of a sudden and firing back? Now, the evidence that has been presented by detractors, shall we say, from the patriotic narrative, the mainstream narrative, is that this was a provoked retreat. And I think that we've seen from some of the leaders of the Maidan that they admit that arms were brought in at the last minute in self-defense, which is reasonable. I mean, they didn't want to be killed themselves. However, there are questions about who actually started the firing, what were their motives. What worries me the most is that we still don't have a clear picture of who stood to lose and to gain from gaining power from the Revolution of Dignity. Was the Revolution of Dignity in effect hijacked by political figures who wanted to make political capital? If you want, very cynically, to remove one set of oligarchs, Yanukovych being the biggest, from the trough, to regroup and rule things in the name of defending the revolution afterwards. And my example there is, what were the purposes for the unexplained meeting of Poroshenko and Klitschko with Firtash in Vienna? Ostensibly, Firtash says in court later, he said, Poroshenko denied this was to keep Yulia Tymoshenko out. But was a deal done behind the scenes? We need to know this, because that might explain a lot about what happened during the next 5 years.
Right, but you're talking about the April Vienna agreement after the revolution. There's too many conspiracies here from my head right now, more than facts. I mean, I go back to the fact that if Yanukovych had nothing to do with these murders and the way the revolution ended, the bloody end, why would he flee?
I'm not saying he didn't have anything to do with it. Probably, the OMON was given orders, shoot back or don't allow your arms to be taken, whatever it is, in self-defense. But what caused, I think, momentary panic, because there seemed to be for a few minutes a real retreat, unless it was a feigned retreat to draw out the protesters. We don't know. We need answers to this. But as you know yourself, And the BBC was hot on the tracks and others, not just the Russians, within weeks or months, saying, the bullets were coming from the other direction, from the evidence is there. Why have the trees disappeared? Who cut down these trees? Who was destroying the evidence almost systematically?
Maybe we could go to the human cost, if we're ready with Tamara Kiptenko's video. Tamara, can you explain your project and why you did this and who you talked to?
Yes, so my project was called Voices of the Heavenly Hundred, and the motivation for this project was kind of personal, because when the Euromaidan started, I was 17 years old. I was at my first year of the Kyiv Mahila Academy, and this was my decision to participate there, and I believe Euromaidan really impacted my life. But what I felt that many people were, even those who participated with me, they were kind of disappointed, and they lost hope. And I thought that maybe there are other ways to talk about Maidan than just to show this horrible shots, footage of the shootings, and that there are also people who lost their relatives at Maidan, but they haven't lost hope. And that is why I saw that maybe the way to show the positive perspective of Maidan was to interview the children of the Heavenly Hundred, those people who are still actively participating in the life of Ukraine, and to show that they are not disappointed, then maybe others also should not.
But they're not disappointed by the sacrifice?
They're not disappointed. They think that Maidan was a crucial event for Ukraine. And when I hear that maybe it wasn't as crucial, and that maybe we couldn't go have European direction without Maidan, from other people, I'm a bit, I can't understand them. And I was curious what was the attitude of those people who lost their parents and their relatives. Yes.
We have, yes, there's families of 100 victims.
And I've met Irina Didic at one protest, and she was only 18 years old. She lost her father, but she's so active, and she is going to court hearings. She is participating in protests, and she's a real warrior. She don't want to give up. And she said that Maidan was a crucial event for Ukraine, even though she lost her father there. So that was...
Are they, so they're pursuing justice still? They believe justice is important?
From what I saw, they are tired and they're exhausted. They are visiting the court hearings, they are disappointed by the released Berkut, but they are still fighting, and they have this strength to seek justice, and that's why I think, yeah.
Let's take a look at one of Tamara's stories, if we have that clip. Do we have the clip we can play?
Лікарі казали тут, що коли він був живий, так, сказали, що максимум втрата ноги. Я прекрасно знаю, що він досягнув би і зробив би набагато більше, чим став би просто героєм, так, якби навіть був би без ноги, направду. Наша громадська організація створювалася взагалі-то саме для всебічної допомоги слідству, щоб якомога швидше можна було отримати вироки вбивцям нашим рідним. Батько для мене був не тільки татом, не тільки другом. Він мені був як старший брат в певні моменти. Коли мені треба було з кимось поділитися, це було саме, в першу чергу треба зробити з татом. Тоді точно все буде правильно, все буде нормально. І, якось так. А ось тато для мене був завжди авторитетом. Я їхав своїми якимись намірами, так, як молодий активний хлопець, скажімо так, да, батько був більш розважений, мав великий досвід і його реально хвилювала ситуація в державі. Ось, наскільки да, я спілкувався вже з ним в лікарні, він же ж в мене помер 12 березня на лікуванні в Польщі, от, був поранений 20 лютого. Пояснював, що, каже, синку, це проблема нашого покоління, того, що, каже, ми допустили, що в 90-му році розслабились, подумали, що все буде класно. Да? Так само, як після 14-го року люди розслабились, подумали, що все було класно, і почалися нові проблеми. І він сказав, що ти спочатку сформуйся як людина, да? Як громадянин, от. Для того, щоб можна було відстоювати свої громадянські права, ти маєш їх знати. І не тільки права, а ще й свої обов'язки. Я впевнений в тому, що Майдан саме зупинив агресію російську. Я боюся, що якби не було Майдану, то люди б жили з Україною в серці, але не з Україною фактично. Так? Це 100%.
I do, because I think that his administration is under renewed pressure, given, as I say, not only the domestic pressure and frustration that's welling up, but also this new additional factor of this significant concern outside that needs to be addressed and explanations need to be offered. Zelensky's administration wants to create the image of change, of decency, but also a place where there is fairness and the rules operate. So whether it's investors or politicians, they need to see that there is an attempt, a real attempt, not just the semblance of one, to provide that justice.
I'm glad you're so hopeful. I think that if the political will was there, they would have done this 6 years ago, and we've seen way too many cases where no justice was done. Are the relatives hopeful, not hopeful?
So, for instance, Irina Didic, who is only 18, but she said that she just started to check, to read all the documents and to follow the investigation, and they are kind of outraged by their actions. At the same time, as I saw, they are hopeful. So if they were not hopeful, they would not visit all the court hearings and they would not participate in all the events, but they want to be heard. This is the most important.
Okay, thanks to your story, they're being heard. Thanks to journalists, this dramatic chapter of Ukrainian history is being recorded. And I think now we have a clip from Nastya Stanko-Hromadske, journalist, her new documentary called Bullets. If we could show that, that would be great.
I went to the doctor, he says, it's a bullet. He clearly identified it and wrote it down in the conclusion. It is not deformed except for the nose, where no groove is visible. That is, its condition allows examination.
After the events on the Maidan, the automatic rifles used by the Kyiv Berkut subdivision themselves were stolen, cut into pieces and hidden in a lake. The factory serial numbers were filed off, but a cartridge case repository remained in the Kyiv police headquarters. When a machine gun is added to the inventory in a police unit, shots are fired from it and the used bullets remain in the repository. This made it possible to compare the bullets from the bodies of those killed and wounded with the bullets stored in this repository later. The examination received by Hromadske on the materials of the trial and from the victim indicates that a bullet was fired into Kolesnikov's arm from a Kalashnikov rifle with number 703087. In the response received by the investigation from the Ministry of Internal Affairs, it is stated that this assault rifle was assigned to a fighter of the Kyiv Berkut special unit called Pavlo Abroskin.
The things I'm being incriminated for, they never happened.
You didn't kill people on the Maidan?
No, I didn't kill. The bullet I was accused of firing at Kolesnikov, it is not my bullet. I had a machine gun that didn't belong to me.
It wasn't yours?
It wasn't.
And you didn't shoot?
No,
You specifically didn't.
I did not shoot and did not see who fired.
Well, that looks like that's going to be a powerful documentary that will add to the knowledge that we have. So just wanted to maybe get some closing thoughts or reaction from our guests. Bohdan first.
Well, on that day I was in Geneva in front of the UN with about 50 Ukrainians who were either studying or being there. We were demonstrating and we were hearing hour by hour about more and more deaths and casualties. We couldn't believe that this was happening. And of course, 6 years later, we want to know the truth. No one is trying to take away from the narrative, the patriotic narrative, and the achievements and promise of the Revolution of Dignity. But it's very important at this stage to know what actually happened behind the scenes, because we have to come to terms with our modern history. We have to know who's who and have answers for why certain things are not being done. And the blockage is not simply on the part of security forces who have something to hide or those who fled, but among those who had 5 years and now have a 6th year to move on with this. My final thought is that remember that those people who may have had some profit from it had political dividends. There was a lot of cash that went missing also. There is money involved. There are all sorts of factors. This new lot have only the problem of getting this issue off the table because it's embarrassing and it's going to haunt them for the rest of well, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, now sadly, besides the lack of justice, anybody with any narrative and any opinion can throw it out there with, you know, and they consider it equal validity. Tamara, your stories are available now on the Kyiv Post website?
Yes, there are 2 stories are already available, and the third will be published tomorrow. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you both for joining me. And I think now let's move into a news recap from the past week in Eastern Europe. "45 Ukrainians and 27 foreign citizens were brought to Ukraine from the coronavirus-hit city of Wuhan in the Chinese Hubei province. After several failed attempts to find out where to place these people for a 2-week quarantine, the authorities settled on a sanatorium in the Poltava region. Following a fake email sent on behalf of the health ministry informing locals of numerous cases of coronavirus after the plane landed, hundreds of people gathered in the small village in central Ukraine. Eventually, violence broke out, leaving 10 people injured, including 9 law enforcers. Local police have launched a probe into yesterday's events. The use of illegal forced labor at building sites funded by the Russian government was uncovered when 5 North Koreans were deported by a judge in central Russia. The 5 men were living on site in unfinished apartment blocks, working 16 hours a day. In the end, they received less than $50 per head for their 2 months' work. In Syria, Russian troops are in the way of Turkish pushback in Idlib, where Ankara recently sent 12,000 troops. The latter has also objected to the active Russian airstrikes in the province in recent months. Moscow stands accused of targeting hospitals and schools, which the Kremlin vehemently denies, despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. A court in London heard that in 2017, Donald Trump offered Julian Assange a pardon if he denied Russia's link to the 2016 hack of Hillary Clinton's email. Congressman Dana Rohrabacher, however, later denied that he was being endorsed by the White House in his offer to the WikiLeaks founder.
Good evening, London.
Okay, we're going to close out the program. I'm with Bohdan Nahaylo, Tamara Kiptenko. I'm Brian Bonner, Chief Editor of the Kyiv Post. But that's not all from us. Hromadske TV provides news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for more than 5 years now. Well, the media landscape in Ukraine is changing. Here's how to make sure stories from Ukraine come from Ukraine.
I would like us to be heard, not only in Ukraine, but all over the world.
No bread for 3 months.
Not one, but look how many. There's bread here and there.
You are going against the God.
Of course, point number one.
Thanks for the invitation.
When will this all end?
The number of political prisoners has grown.
How can Ukraine...
Good evening from our headquarters in Kyiv.